Officer Scott Harland arrived at the Riverside Mall in response to a report of an armed robbery. Upon observing Anthony Walker, a black gentleman, restraining a white individual on the ground, with a firearm evident in the black man's waistband, he immediately drew his own sidearm. This occurred despite the panicked accounts from terrified shoppers who insisted Walker had just disarmed the assailant and rescued everyone. Harland commanded Walker to release the suspect. Even as numerous witnesses vociferously declared Walker the hero who foiled the robbery, Harland dismissed their claims. He proceeded to detain Walker, accepting the white perpetrator's fabricated narrative that Walker was the actual wrongdoer. Consequently, the genuine armed robber was permitted to depart without any verification of security footage. This transpired despite the pleas of his junior partner, Officer Thomas Grant, who urged him to ascertain the facts first. Walker, an active Delta Force operative, was held for 6 agonizing hours in a detention cell, asserting his innocence, while the dangerous criminal he had risked his life to apprehend roamed freely. All this unfolded because Officer Harland's inherent prejudice prevented him from acknowledging a black man as a hero and a white man as the offender. What Harland failed to realize was that Anthony Walker was among the military's most distinguished and highly decorated special operations personnel, whose commanding officer would view the viral footage of his unjust arrest within mere hours. Before we proceed, in which city or nation are you viewing this broadcast? Please share it in the comments section. We are eager to learn about our audience's locations. If you believe that apprehending an armed robber should not result in an arrest, kindly express your support by liking this video and subscribing to our channel. Anthony Walker arrived at the Riverside Mall parking lot precisely at 2:15 on a Tuesday afternoon with a straightforward objective. Enter, purchase a birthday present for his younger sister, perhaps acquire a replacement phone charger due to his current one's frayed cable, and depart within 20 minutes. At 34 years of age, Walker had dedicated the preceding 12 years of his life to serving his country as a Delta Force operator. He had executed classified missions in some of the world's most perilous regions, earning commendations and accolades that would never be publicly disclosed due to the sensitive nature of the operations themselves. He was on a 2-week leave following an overseas assignment too classified to discuss with anyone outside his unit, and he had promised his sister he would be present at her birthday dinner that evening, a gift in hand. Walker entered the mall premises clad in casual attire, dark jeans, a plain black t-shirt, and athletic shoes, appearing no different from any other patron enjoying a tranquil Tuesday. He glanced at his phone as he walked, scrolling through a text from his sister, who reminded him of her desire for noise-canceling headphones, the premium model she had been hinting at for months. A smile touched Walker's lips as he proceeded towards the electronics store situated near the mall's center, entirely oblivious that in less than 5 minutes his life would be irrevocably altered. The electronics store was moderately patronized, with approximately 8 customers browsing the displays of phones, tablets, and accessories. Walker navigated towards the headphone section at the rear of the establishment, examining the various brands and their price points. He was in the process of comparing 2 distinct models when a voice bellowed from the front of the store, "Everyone, get down on the floor immediately. This is a robbery." Walker's head snapped up and his Delta Force training engaged instantaneously. A Caucasian male, appearing to be in his early 30s, sporting a black hoodie and a mask obscuring the lower half of his face, stood near the cash register, leveling a semi-automatic handgun at the young cashier. She was a woman who seemed barely 20 years old and was paralyzed with terror. The other patrons in the store immediately dropped to the floor, some letting out cries, others frozen in silence by fear. Walker assumed a low crouch behind a display shelf, his mind rapidly analyzing the tactical situation with the speed and precision that had ensured his survival through countless combat engagements. He assessed the threat within seconds. The robber's posture was amateurish, his feet too close together, lacking a proper shooting stance. The firearm was held at an awkward angle, his finger resting on the trigger, but his grip was incorrect. The man's hands trembled. His head constantly darted around to survey the store, indicating nervousness and inexperience. This was not a professional. This was someone desperate and dangerous, yet untrained, which in some respects made him more volatile. "Open the register," the robber commanded the cashier, his voice cracking with adrenaline. "Put all the cash in a bag. Do it now, or I'll shoot you." The cashier's hands shook as she fumbled with the register, pressing the wrong buttons twice before it finally sprang open with a mechanical chime. She retrieved a plastic shopping bag from beneath the counter and began hastily stuffing bills into it with trembling fingers. Another shopper, an older woman, crouched near the entrance, held her phone discreetly against her body, and Walker observed her fingers in motion. She was already dialing 911. Intelligent, Walker mused. The police would arrive swiftly. Walker began to move. He maintained a low profile, utilizing the display shelves for cover, steadily closing the distance between himself and the robber, each step silent. His extensive training in close-quarters combat and hostage rescue scenarios rendered this maneuver almost routine. Assess the threat, identify the opportune moment, execute with precision. He moved through the aisles, his footsteps making no sound on the tiled floor, keeping the display's position between himself and the robber's field of vision. The robber was entirely fixated on the cashier and the money, precisely the situation Walker required. The young woman finished filling the bag and extended it with both hands, tears streaming down her face. The robber reached for the bag with his left hand while retaining his grip on the firearm with his right. In that critical instant, he slightly lowered the weapon, his attention divided between the cash and maintaining control of the firearm. Walker acted with astonishing speed. He covered the remaining 12 feet in under 2 seconds. His hand shot out, seizing the robber's gun wrist with an iron grip, a strength honed by years of military discipline. Walker twisted the wrist with swift force, employing a professional disarming technique that compelled the robber's finger from the trigger and rotated the barrel away from everyone in the store. The robber emitted a cry of shock as Walker simultaneously swept his legs out from under him with a flawlessly executed takedown, driving the man face first onto the floor with controlled ferocity. The firearm clattered across the tiles. Walker maintained his knee firmly planted on the robber's back, wrenching both of the man's arms behind him in a restraint hold that rendered escape impossible. The entire sequence from Walker's initial movement to the robber being subdued on the ground took less than 4 seconds. It was textbook Delta Force close-quarters combat, executed with the precision of someone who had performed such actions hundreds of times in training and actual operations. Walker reached over and retrieved the fallen weapon, immediately engaging the safety with practiced muscle memory before tucking it into his waistband at the small of his back, ensuring it was secure and inaccessible to the suspect. The robber struggled beneath him, but Walker's weight and positioning rendered his resistance futile. "Someone call the police!" Walker exclaimed, unaware that the woman near the entrance had already placed that call nearly 2 minutes prior when the robbery first commenced. "They're already on their way," the woman responded, her phone still pressed to her ear. The other customers slowly began to rise from the floor, their faces displaying a mixture of shock, relief, and admiration. The cashier leaned against the counter, breathing heavily, her hands still trembling. A teenage girl positioned near the phone case display held her phone aloft, capturing everything, her fingers steady despite the adrenaline surge. She was a social media influencer with a following exceeding 400,000, and she had just witnessed something remarkable. Walker kept the robber pinned, awaiting developments. Throughout his Delta Force career, he had apprehended high-value targets in foreign territories, secured hostile combatants under fire, and accomplished mission objectives that would remain undisclosed. Subduing an amateur armed robber in a shopping mall while awaiting local law enforcement should have been the least demanding task of his year. Less than 3 minutes later, the sound of heavy footsteps approached from the mall corridor outside the store. 2 police officers burst through the entrance, their weapons drawn. Officer Scott Harland led the way, a Caucasian male in his early 40s with 15 years of service. Directly behind him was Officer Thomas Grant, a younger Caucasian officer in his late 20s with merely 3 years of experience, who looked to Harland for direction on every assignment. Harland's gaze swept the scene, locking onto the tableau before him, a black man in civilian attire restraining a white man on the ground, with a firearm clearly visible tucked into the black man's waistband. Harland's mind processed this image through the filter of 15 years of ingrained bias and prejudice, arriving at an immediate and definitive conclusion. "Step away from him," Harland commanded, his service weapon aimed directly at Walker. "Drop the weapon. Get your hands where I can see them. Now." Walker looked up at the officer, maintaining his restraining hold on the man beneath him. "Officer, this individual just attempted to rob this establishment at gunpoint. I disarmed him and am holding him for you. The firearm in my waistband is his weapon. I secured it after subduing him." Before Walker could utter another word, the customers erupted in a chorus of voices. "He saved us!" the cashier cried. "That man stopped the robbery!" another patron shouted. "The white guy is the criminal," someone else yelled. "He's the hero," the teenage influencer proclaimed, her phone still recording. Harland's face contorted with irritation. "Everyone, be quiet. I will handle this." Grant stood behind Harland, his weapon also drawn, but his expression conveyed uncertainty as he observed the terrified faces of the customers, all recounting the same narrative. "Sir, perhaps we should heed their words," Grant began. "I said I will handle it," Harland snapped at his partner. Walker maintained a calm, professional tone. "Officer, I understand the appearance may be confusing, but I assure you, these are the facts. This man," he applied slight pressure to the robber's back, "entered the store, brandished a weapon, and demanded money from the cashier. I am a trained professional. I disarmed him and restrained him. The firearm you observe in my waistband is the weapon I confiscated from him. I engaged the safety and secured it. I pose no threat. Inquire of any of these witnesses." The customers immediately began speaking over each other again, all conveying variations of the same assertion. Walker was the hero, and the white man was the robber who had endangered their lives. "I instructed everyone to remain silent," Harland roared, his weapon still fixed on Walker. "Now I'm giving you one final opportunity. Reach behind you very slowly. Retrieve that firearm with 2 fingers and place it on the ground before you. Then I want you to release that man and place your hands on your head." Walker took a slow, deliberate breath, recognizing the officer's unwillingness to accept reason or evidence. He carefully reached behind his back, withdrew the firearm using only his thumb and index finger on the grip, and slid it across the tiled floor away from himself. Grant promptly moved forward and secured the weapon while Harland maintained his firearm trained on Walker. "Now release him and place your hands on your head," Harland ordered. Walker relinquished his hold on the robber and raised his hands, placing them atop his head. The moment Walker's weight was lifted, the robber, whose name was Ryan Caldwell, though Walker was unaware of this at the time, scrambled to his feet, seizing an opportunity amidst the confusion. Harlan moved swiftly, grasping Walker's arm and forcing him to turn around. Grant holstered the secured firearm and approached to assist Harlan, though his face clearly indicated his hesitation regarding their actions. Harlan wrenched Walker's arms behind his back and snapped handcuffs onto his wrists with unnecessary force. "You are under arrest," Harlan declared. "For what?" Walker demanded, his voice still composed but tinged with anger. "I intervened in a robbery. Ask these individuals. Ask the cashier." The cashier stepped forward, tears still evident on her face. "Officers, please, you must listen. That gentleman saved my life. The white individual in the hoodie is the one who attempted to rob us. He possessed the firearm. This man disarmed him and held him until you arrived." Multiple other customers voiced their agreement, all attempting to convey the same account, but Harlan remained deafened to their pleas. He perceived only what his prejudiced mind dictated: a black man with a weapon, a white victim, and bewildered witnesses who misunderstood the events. Ryan Caldwell, the actual armed robber, stood near the counter, his excitement growing as he realized the police officers believed Walker to be the perpetrator. His mind raced, and he made a split-second decision to exploit their misconception. "Officers," Caldwell stated, his voice trembling with feigned emotion, "thank God you're here. That man attempted to rob the store. He had a gun. I tried to stop him, but he overpowered me. That is why he had me on the ground." Walker's head snapped towards Caldwell in disbelief. "That is a falsehood. You are the robber. You held this entire establishment at gunpoint." Grant glanced between Walker and Caldwell, then at the customers, all vociferously asserting that Walker was truthful. "Sir," Grant said quietly to Harlan, "perhaps we should examine the security cameras before—" "We do not require cameras," Harlan interrupted. "I can clearly see precisely what transpired here." Caldwell pressed his advantage, moving closer to the officers and lowering his voice as if confiding a secret. "Officers, I suspect some of these individuals might be collaborating with him. That's why they are supporting his narrative. I observed some of them depart immediately after you arrived. They fled in fear. I believe they were his accomplices." That was all Harlan needed to hear. His jaw tightened with conviction, and he increased his grip on Walker's arm. "Everyone must vacate the store immediately, or you will all be detained as potential accessories." The customers erupted in protest. "This is preposterous. You are arresting the wrong individual. Check the cameras. He is a hero." Harlan began shouting over them. "Leave now. This is a crime scene. If you do not exit immediately, you will be taken into custody." The teenage influencer kept her phone raised, still recording as the customers were compelled towards the exit. "This is wrong," she declared. "You are releasing the criminal." "Put that phone down, or you're next," Harlan barked at her. She lowered the phone but continued recording from her hip as she was ushered out of the store with the other patrons. Within 2 minutes, the store was deserted save for Harlan, Grant, Walker in handcuffs, and Ryan Caldwell, the armed robber, who could scarcely believe his extraordinary fortune. Caldwell continued his charade. "Officers, thank you for apprehending him. May I depart now? He injured my arm when he attacked me. I need to have it examined." Grant looked at his superior officer with barely concealed disbelief. "Sir, we must verify his account first. We should review the security footage. We should take statements from the witnesses. The cashier seemed quite adamant that—" Harlan's face flushed with anger at being questioned by his junior partner. "Officer Grant, I have been performing this duty for 15 years. I comprehend what I'm witnessing. A black man with a firearm, a white victim attempting to prevent a crime. The witnesses were frightened and disoriented. This individual—" He shook Walker roughly. is the perpetrator. This man," he gestured towards Caldwell, "attempted to be a hero and suffered for his efforts." "But, sir," Grant ventured again. "That is sufficient," Harlan snapped. "Do you intend to question my judgment? You have been on the force for 3 years. I have encountered hundreds of such scenarios. Trust me, the footage will confirm precisely what I already know." Walker's voice cut through the tension, sharp and cold. "You are making the most significant error of your career. That man is a dangerous criminal. I am active duty military. Examine my identification, contact my command, and for heaven's sake, review the security cameras before you permit him to depart from here." Harlan completely disregarded him and turned to Caldwell. "Sir, you are free to go. We will require a statement from you at a later time. Here is my card." Caldwell accepted the card with hands that had been trembling with fear 10 minutes prior when he was robbing the store, but were now steady with relief and astonishment. He had been caught red-handed by someone who clearly possessed expertise, and now the police were allowing him to walk away scot-free. He proceeded towards the exit before they could reconsider. Grant made one final attempt. "Sir, please, just allow me to access the security footage. It will take 2 minutes. We can confirm everything before anyone departs." Harlan turned on his partner with barely contained fury. "Officer Grant, if you question my authority one more time during this call, you will be issuing parking citations for the next year. Do you understand me?" Grant's lips sealed. He was 3 years into his career and still in a probationary status in many respects. Confronting a 15-year veteran could jeopardize his future on the force. He remained silent. Ryan Caldwell, a wanted man for 6 armed robberies across 3 counties over the past 4 months, a violent offender who had terrorized dozens of victims, walked out of Riverside Mall. A free man because Officer Scott Harlan's prejudice was more potent than his obligation to verify the facts. Harlan dragged Walker towards the exit. "Let's go. You are being booked for armed robbery, assault, and any other charges I deem appropriate." Walker was compelled into the rear of the patrol car and transported to the police station. He demanded to speak with the supervisor. He insisted on contacting his commanding officer. He informed them he was with Delta Force. He urged them to review the mall security footage. No one listened. They processed him as they would any other offender, confiscated his possessions, photographed him, fingerprinted him, and confined him to a holding cell. Walker sat on the metal bench, observing the door lock behind him, acutely aware that somewhere Ryan Caldwell was free and undoubtedly planning his next criminal act. Meanwhile, the teenage influencer, who had recorded the entire incident, sat in her car in the mall parking lot and uploaded the video to her social media accounts. The caption read, "Police arrest black hero who stopped armed robbery and let white criminal go free. This man saved our lives and they handcuffed him. Share this everywhere. Hashtag justice for a hero. Hashtag Riverside Mall." The video began to proliferate immediately. Within 30 minutes, the mall's official social media team noticed it trending and reviewed their own security footage. What they observed filled them with dismay. They downloaded the complete video depicting Anthony Walker heroically disarming the robber and posted it as a comment beneath the influencer's video with the caption, "Security footage from our cameras. This individual is a hero. The police apprehended the wrong person." Within 3 hours, the combined videos had garnered 5 million views. Within 6 hours, they reached the desk of a colonel within Delta Force Command who recognized Master Sergeant Anthony Walker instantly and reached for his phone, his face a mask of thunder. Officer Scott Harlan's career and freedom had just begun their countdown to zero. Anthony Walker occupied holding cell number 12 at the city police station, gazing at the concrete walls that had become his reality for the past 4 hours. He had requested to speak with a supervisor on 7 separate occasions. He had repeatedly requested to speak with his superior officer a total of 9 times. He informed every correctional officer who passed his confinement area that he was an active member of Delta Force and that they were detaining the incorrect individual. Each time, the response was identical, either complete silence or a derisive chuckle, followed by, "Certainly you are, pal." Around the 3rd hour, one officer paused at his cell door, a smirk playing on his lips. "In the military, you say? Are you a Navy SEAL as well? Perhaps a superhero?" The officer departed, chuckling, while Walker remained acutely aware that Ryan Caldwell, the actual perpetrator of the armed robbery, was somewhere out in the community, free to inflict further harm because a prejudiced officer could not fathom a black man being the rescuer. Meanwhile, at the shopping center, a teenage social media personality named Jessica Martinez sat in the food court, her mobile device inundated with notifications. The video she had uploaded of Walker's apprehension, accompanied by the desperate pleas of customers proclaiming his innocence, had amassed 2 million views in a mere 2 hours. The comment section was ablaze with indignation. Individuals were tagging news outlets, civil rights organizations, and local elected officials, demanding explanations for the arrest of a hero, while the actual offender went unapprehended. Subsequently, the official account for the Riverside Mall posted their comment, which included the security camera footage, and the situation escalated dramatically. The exceptionally clear surveillance video captured the entirety of the incident from multiple vantage points. It depicted Ryan Caldwell entering the establishment, brandishing a firearm, threatening the cashier, and then Anthony Walker, with practiced precision, disarming him and incapacitating him in a textbook Special Forces maneuver. The footage showed Walker securing the weapon and holding Caldwell in custody until law enforcement arrived. Following this, officers Harlan and Grant entered the scene. Heron immediately aimed his weapon at Walker, initiating the chaotic arrest that ensued, while patrons frantically attempted to convey their account of events. Jessica's phone rang. It was a producer from a national news network inquiring if they could conduct an interview with her and utilize her footage. She readily agreed and recounted her entire experience. Within an hour, 3 major news organizations were broadcasting the story with headlines such as "Hero apprehended after foiling armed robbery, police release criminal, arrest man who saved lives." The video disseminated across social media platforms nationwide, sparking widespread outrage and disbelief. The hashtag Free Anthony Walker began trending, even though most individuals were not yet familiar with his name. Initial posts simply referred to them as Hash Malaro. Civil rights attorneys were already contacting the police department to demand information. Local activists were assembling outside the station with protest signs, but the video had also reached another crucial individual. Precisely 6 hours and 14 minutes after Walker's arrest, a colonel, whose name and likeness were classified for national security reasons, was reviewing deployment rosters in his office at Fort Bragg when an aide knocked. "Sir, you must see this immediately," the aide stated, presenting a tablet. "It concerns Master Sergeant Walker." The colonel took the tablet and viewed the mall security footage, which showcased Walker disarming the assailant with a kind of expert efficiency honed through years of elite special operations training. He then watched the mobile phone video depicting Walker's arrest, while witnesses vociferously asserted the truth that the responding officers disregarded. The colonel's jaw tightened with each passing second. "How long has he been held in custody?" the colonel inquired, his voice dangerously low. "Approximately 6 hours, sir. We have confirmed his location at the city police station on 4th Street. The colonel placed the tablet down and retrieved his secure communication device. He dialed a number that connected him directly to the police chief's private mobile, a line known to very few. The phone rang twice before Police Chief Robert Morrison answered. "This is Chief Morrison." "Chief Morrison, this is Colonel Hayes from United States Special Operations Command," the colonel stated, his tone imbued with absolute authority. "You are presently holding one of my operators, Master Sergeant Anthony Walker. He was wrongfully apprehended approximately 6 hours ago after intervening in an armed robbery at Riverside Mall. You will release him without delay and have him present outside your station within 30 minutes, or you will be facing the Department of Defense, the FBI, the Justice Department, and a media firestorm that will effectively terminate your career and devastate your department's standing. Is that perfectly clear?" Chief Morrison's blood ran cold. He had been at home, sharing a meal with his family, when his phone rang. Now he was being informed that his department had apprehended a Delta Force operator. "Sir, I was unaware of the situation. Allow me to investigate." "You have 30 minutes, the colonel interjected. "And Chief Morrison, the perpetrator your officer released is named Ryan Caldwell. He is a wanted individual for 6 armed robberies across 3 counties. Your officer permitted a dangerous felon to depart while arresting a decorated war hero. I suggest you commence formulating a plan to rectify this catastrophic error." The colonel terminated the call. Chief Morrison immediately contacted the station, and within seconds, the entire facility was engulfed in controlled pandemonium. The desk sergeant retrieved Walker's arrest record and found precisely what the colonel had described. He then viewed the mall security footage, which had already become public, and felt a sickening lurch. They had apprehended a hero and released a wanted criminal, and irrefutable evidence viewed by millions was available. The shift commander rushed to the holding cells. "Release Anthony Walker immediately. Get him out now." Walker was escorted from his cell, and the shift commander stood before him, his face ashen and visibly shaken. "Master Sergeant Walker, a grave error has occurred. You are being released without delay. On behalf of this department, I extend our sincerest apologies for this oversight." Walker's expression was impassive. "An error. Your officer apprehended me for stopping a robbery. He disregarded 8 witnesses. He accepted the criminal's fabricated account without verifying a single detail. He allowed a dangerous individual to escape, and you confined me for 6 hours while I repeatedly informed you that you had the wrong man." Walker's voice lowered to a tone that was both firm and definitive. "This was not an error. This was racial prejudice, and someone will be held accountable." The shift commander offered no retort, as he recognized the absolute validity of Walker's statement. Walker's personal effects, his wallet, his phone, his keys, were returned. His phone displayed 63 missed calls and over 200 text messages. Several were from his Delta Force command. Many were from media organizations. Some were from his family members who had witnessed the viral video and were consumed with fear. Chief Morrison arrived at the station 28 minutes after the colonel's call. He found Walker standing in the lobby, no longer handcuffed, but his countenance bore the weariness and simmering anger of a man who had been subjected to criminal treatment for performing a commendable act. "Master Sergeant Walker, I am Chief Morrison. I cannot adequately express the depth of my regret for what transpired today. This department failed you in the most egregious manner possible." Walker regarded the chief with eyes that had borne witness to conflict and injustice across the globe, but had never anticipated experiencing such treatment within his own nation after safeguarding American lives. "Where is Officer Harlan?" "He has been suspended pending a thorough investigation. We are initiating proceedings for his dismissal." "And the perpetrator he allowed to escape?" Morrison's expression tightened. "We have units actively searching for Ryan Caldwell. A warrant has been issued for his arrest." 6 hours too late, Walker stated quietly. He could be 3 counties away by now. He could have harmed someone else. All because your officer perceived a black man and concluded I must be the criminal. Morrison possessed no defense, for none existed. Master Sergeant Walker, we will cooperate fully with any legal recourse you choose to pursue. You are unequivocally entitled to justice. Walker withdrew his phone and made a call. This is Master Sergeant Anthony Walker. I need to speak with Sarah Chen. He paused briefly. Miss Chen, I require the assistance of a civil rights attorney. I was just apprehended for thwarting an armed robbery while the police allowed the actual perpetrator to escape. Yes, it is all documented on video. Millions of views already. I am initiating a federal lawsuit and am determined to ensure this never befalls another individual. He terminated the call and looked at Chief Morrison. You will be hearing from my attorney, from the Department of Defense, and from every news organization in the country. What occurred today will not be resolved with a mere apology. Walker exited the police station into a throng of journalists, cameras, and protesters holding placards that proclaimed "Justice for the hero and arrest the right man." He was free, but his pursuit of accountability had only just commenced. Officer Scott Harland sat in his living room observing the news coverage of his own egregious error, a racial transgression that had gone viral and was accumulating views at an alarming rate, now exceeding 40 million. Realizing his entire existence was on the precipice of collapse, Sarah Chen accepted Anthony Walker's case within 2 hours of his release and promptly filed a federal civil rights lawsuit seeking $18.3 million in damages. She also undertook an action that would prove utterly devastating for Officer Scott Harland. She subpoenaed his complete personnel file, spanning 15 years of service, and the contents ignited her fury. Harland had 17 excessive force complaints lodged against him throughout his career. 14 of these complaints were filed by individuals identified as black or Hispanic suspects. He had 16 wrongful arrest complaints documented. 13 of these were filed by minority individuals. Every single complaint had been dismissed or had resulted in nothing more than a written reprimand that was placed in his file and subsequently disregarded. The pattern was undeniable and had been a matter of record for over a decade, yet no action had ever been taken by the department to address it. Chen also uncovered a more disturbing revelation. She obtained records of every arrest Harlan had executed over the preceding 5 years and discovered that 42% of his arrests of black suspects were subsequently dismissed due to insufficient evidence or procedural irregularities. The corresponding figure for white suspects was 11%. Harlan had systematically targeted minorities, affecting flawed arrests, and the department had permitted this to persist year after year. However, the most damning evidence emerged from the mall security footage, juxtaposed with the body camera recordings from both officers. The mall cameras provided an exceptionally clear depiction of events. Walker's expert disarming technique, his meticulous securing of the weapon, his calm demeanor while awaiting law enforcement, and then Harlan's immediate assumption that the black man must be the perpetrator, despite 8 witnesses vehemently proclaiming otherwise. The body camera footage from Officer Thomas Grant's chest camera captured something even more revealing. Grant's camera recorded the audio of him repeatedly imploring Harlan to review the security footage before proceeding with any arrests. The audio clearly documented Grant stating, "Sir, we should verify the facts first," and "Sir, please, we need to check the cameras," and "Sir, all the witnesses are stating the same thing." It also recorded Harlan's responses, dismissive, irate, and utterly convinced of his racially biased assumptions. The breaking point arrived when Chen obtained Ryan Caldwell's criminal history. Caldwell was not merely a casual offender, he was a wanted fugitive across 3 counties with a history of violence spanning 12 years. Law enforcement had been actively searching for him for months. His photograph had been circulated to every police department in the region, and Officer Scott Harland, who should have recognized him from the wanted bulletins, had gazed directly at a wanted violent felon and permitted him to escape because Harland's prejudice prevented him from believing a black man could be innocent. 3 days after Walker's release, Ryan Caldwell was finally apprehended after attempting another armed robbery at a convenience store 15 miles away. During that incident, he shot the store clerk in the shoulder when the man moved too slowly to open the register. The clerk survived, but would carry the bullet wound and the ensuing trauma for the remainder of his life. Chen ensured this fact was incorporated into Walker's lawsuit. Officer Harland's prejudiced decision to release Caldwell directly precipitated another violent crime and inflicted harm on another victim. The state attorney general reviewed all the evidence and announced that criminal charges would be filed against Officer Scott Harland. The charges were severe: false arrest, official misconduct, obstruction of justice for failing to examine available evidence, and aiding and abetting a fugitive for releasing a wanted criminal. Collectively, Harland faced a potential sentence of up to 25 years in prison. Anthony Walker's complete military record was declassified to a degree sufficient for public release, and the media's subsequent discoveries rendered Harland's actions even more inexcusable. Walker was not just any Delta Force operator. He was one of the most decorated active-duty Special Forces soldiers in the United States military. His service spanned 12 years, including 3 combat deployments to Afghanistan, 2 to Iraq, and multiple classified operations that would never be fully divulged to the public. Walker had earned the Silver Star for valor after single-handedly repelling an enemy assault while evacuating wounded soldiers under fire. He had received 2 Bronze Stars for heroic achievement in combat operations. He bore the Purple Heart, awarded after sustaining wounds from an IED blast that tragically claimed the lives of 2 of his comrades. He had personally trained Allied forces in counterterrorism tactics in 7 different nations. The Department of Defense considered him a national strategic asset, one of the elite warriors who operated discreetly to ensure the country's safety. This was the man Officer Scott Harland had confined in a cell like a common criminal because his skin color did not align with Harland's preconceived notion of what a hero ought to resemble. Chen orchestrated a press conference, and Anthony Walker appeared in his military dress uniform, adorned with 12 years of ribbons and medals. The room fell silent as he approached the microphone, his bearing exuding every facet of the discipline and professionalism that had defined him as an elite warrior. "My name is Master Sergeant Anthony Walker, United States Army Delta Force," he began, his voice steady and clear. "On Tuesday afternoon, I intervened in an armed robbery at Riverside Mall. I utilized my military training to disarm a dangerous criminal and protect innocent lives. I apprehended that criminal and awaited the arrival of law enforcement so that he could be arrested and prosecuted. Instead, I was apprehended. The criminal was released, and for 6 hours I remained in a cell while valued more than the truth." Walker paused, allowing the weight of his words to resonate. 8 witnesses informed Officer Harland that I was the hero. The cashier, whose life I saved, pleaded with him to listen. His own partner urged him to review the security cameras. Officer Harland disregarded all of it because when he looked at me, he did not see a soldier who has dedicated 12 years of service to this country. He did not see a man who prevented a violent crime. He saw a black man, and in his mind, that automatically designated me as the criminal. The assembled reporters remained silent, their cameras capturing every syllable. Officer Harland's prejudice did not solely harm me. It resulted in the release of Ryan Caldwell, a wanted violent criminal. 3 days after Harland allowed him to depart that mall, Caldwell shot an innocent store clerk during another robbery. That man is alive, but he will carry the physical and emotional scars of that bullet wound perpetually. That occurred because Officer Harlan's bias superseded facts. Walker's voice hardened into a tone of resolute finality. I have confronted enemies abroad. I have been fired upon, subjected to explosions, and wounded in service to this nation. I never anticipated that upon my return, and after saving American lives, I would be treated as a criminal by the very individuals sworn to serve and protect. Officer Harlan observed my skin color, and his prejudice dictated every subsequent action. He will answer for it in criminal court. He will answer for it in civil court. And he will answer for it by spending the next 20 years of his life in a prison cell, contemplating the hero he arrested and the criminal he liberated. Walker stepped away from the microphone, and the room erupted in a cacophony of questions, none of which he answered. He had conveyed everything that needed to be said. His legal counsel would manage the remainder. Officer Scott Harlan watched the press conference from his living room, where he remained suspended without pay, fully cognizant that his career was irrevocably over. His liberty was about to be curtailed, and his name would forever be associated with one of the most flagrant instances of racially motivated policing ever captured on film. The trial would ultimately vindicate Walker's assertions in every respect. However, first, the consequences would unfold in their full, devastating magnitude. Officer Scott Harlan's criminal trial commenced 4 months subsequent to Anthony Walker's wrongful arrest and continued for 3 weeks. The prosecution presented an overwhelming body of evidence. This included the mall security footage, which depicted Walker's heroic actions in pristine detail. Additionally, there was audio from Officer Thomas Grant's body camera capturing him imploring Harlan to verify the facts prior to effecting arrests. Testimony from all 8 witnesses who had vehemently proclaimed Walker's innocence was also presented, along with Harlan's 15-year record of complaints, which demonstrated a distinct pattern of racial bias that the department had consistently ignored. The defense attempted to argue that Harlan had made a judgment call under immense pressure in a high-stakes situation and had simply committed an honest error. However, the prosecution dismantled this defense by playing the body camera audio, which revealed that Grant had afforded Harlan numerous opportunities to ascertain the truth, all of which Harlan had unequivocally rejected, clearly stating that his mind was already made up based on what he perceived: a black man in possession of a firearm. The jury deliberated for 7 hours and returned guilty verdicts on all charges: false arrest, official misconduct, obstruction of justice, and aiding and abetting a fugitive. Harlan remained motionless as the verdicts were read, his face pale and vacant, understanding that his life as he knew it had reached its conclusion. At the sentencing 2 weeks later, the judge exhibited no leniency. "Officer Harlan," the judge began, "you were entrusted with a badge and the public's confidence to serve and protect all citizens equitably. Instead, you allowed your racial prejudice to dictate your actions in the most reprehensible manner. You apprehended a decorated war hero who had just saved innocent lives. You released a dangerous wanted criminal who subsequently injured another victim. Your racism endangered the community, betrayed the trust inherent in the badge you wore, and eroded the public's faith in law enforcement." The judge paused and fixed his gaze directly upon Harlan. "This sentence must accurately reflect the gravity of your misconduct and unequivocally convey that racism within policing will not be tolerated. I hereby sentence you to 20 years in state prison with the possibility of parole after serving 16 years. Harlan was escorted away in handcuffs to commence his sentence. At 43 years old, he would be 59 at the earliest date of his potential release. His wife had already initiated divorce proceedings. His 2 teenage children refused to communicate with him. He had forfeited his pension, his benefits, and his freedom. The video depicting his arrest of Walker, while witnesses pleaded for the truth, had been viewed over 100 million times globally and was now utilized in police academies across the nation as the definitive example of how racial bias devastates lives and careers. The city settled Anthony Walker's federal lawsuit for the full amount of $18.3 million, opting to avoid a jury trial where the awarded damages could have potentially been even higher. This settlement represented the largest wrongful arrest payout in the state's history. As a condition of the agreement, the city was mandated to implement comprehensive reforms, including mandatory racial bias training for all officers, body cameras that could not be deactivated during any interaction, an independent civilian oversight board to investigate all excessive force and wrongful arrest complaints, immediate termination for any officer with a documented history of racial bias complaints, and quarterly public reports detailing arrest statistics categorized by race. Police Commissioner Robert Morrison was compelled to relinquish his position amid significant public disapproval. An internal investigation, a comprehensive review of departmental operations, uncovered 41 officers whose complaint histories bore striking resemblances to those associated with Harland. Numerous allegations of excessive force or unlawful detentions, predominantly lodged by citizens from minority backgrounds, had consistently been dismissed or met with negligible disciplinary action. 28 of these implicated officers were subsequently terminated. 13 received final warnings and were placed on a probationary status. The entirety of the department's leadership structure underwent a complete overhaul, from the highest echelons down to the most junior personnel. Officer Thomas Grant, the less experienced partner who had persistently urged Harlan to verify the facts of the situation, was elevated in rank and honored with a commendation for his attempts to avert the unlawful apprehension despite facing pressure from his superior. He subsequently became a vocal proponent of police reform within the department, contributing to the development of novel training modules focused on unconscious bias and the rigorous verification of evidence. Ryan Caldwell, the armed assailant whom Harlan had erroneously released, was found guilty on 7 separate charges of armed robbery, inclusive of the assault on the convenience store employee, and received a sentence of 40 years in federal penitentiary without the possibility of parole. During the proceedings for his sentencing, the presiding judge specifically remarked that Caldwell should have been apprehended at the Riverside Mall and that Officer Harlan's dereliction of duty had directly facilitated Caldwell's subsequent commission of further violent offenses. Anthony Walker returned to active deployment with Delta Force, continuing his distinguished military career by undertaking classified assignments across the globe. He was promoted to the rank of Sergeant Major, a recognition of both his heroic actions at the mall and his dignified response to the subsequent injustices he endured. He allocated $10 million from his settlement to establish the Courage and Justice Foundation, a non-profit organization dedicated to providing legal aid to individuals who had experienced police misconduct and unlawful detentions, with a particular emphasis on serving minority communities who frequently lacked the financial resources to challenge systemic inequity. Over its initial 4 years of operation, the foundation provided assistance to more than 300 individuals, a significant portion of whom were persons who had been wrongly incarcerated by officers with documented histories of racial prejudice, but who had been deterred from seeking recourse due to fear or financial constraints. Walker's case served as a catalyst, encouraging others to come forward, and the foundation ensured they received the requisite support to hold officers accountable for their transgressions. Walker also emerged as a prominent national orator on civil rights and police accountability, traveling to police departments and academic institutions nationwide to share his experiences and advocate for systemic improvements. He presented before congressional committees, contributing to the formulation of federal legislation concerning police oversight and accountability mechanisms. 5 years subsequent to his unlawful arrest, Walker was serving as a command sergeant major in Delta Force, one of the most senior enlisted positions within special operations. His foundation had expanded into a nationwide entity with operational branches in 12 states. Harlan remained incarcerated, serving his sentence with 11 years yet to pass before he became eligible for parole. Among the inmate population, he was infamously known as the prejudiced officer who had arrested a decorated war hero and received precisely what he deserved. The footage captured by body cameras and the security recordings from Walker's apprehension remain among the most extensively viewed illustrations of racial profiling in the annals of American law enforcement, frequently utilized in training simulations, university curricula, and civil rights discussions as undeniable evidence that racial bias not only harms individuals but also compromises the integrity of justice, imperils communities, and devastates the lives of those who perpetuate it. The lesson learned was both harsh and profoundly public. Officer Scott Harlan witnessed a black man perform an act of heroism, yet his ingrained racism compelled him to perceive a criminal instead of a savior. This singular decision resulted in a forfeiture of 20 years of his freedom, cost the city $18.3 million, inflicted upon Ryan Caldwell's subsequent victim a bullet wound that would never fully mend, and brought to light a police department's decades-long failure to address pervasive racial prejudice within its ranks. Anthony Walker had thwarted an armed robbery while on leave from his military service to his country. He was apprehended for the color of his skin while acting with integrity, but his resolute refusal to passively accept that injustice compelled an entire system to confront its failings and enact genuine transformation. If this narrative serves to underscore that even distinguished war heroes can fall victim to racial profiling, please share it with all who need to comprehend that racism within policing erodes trust, jeopardizes communities, and necessitates unwavering confrontation through accountability and consequences. What remedial measures do you believe would deter officers from disregarding evidence and resorting to biased arrests instead of fact-based decision-making? Please share your thoughts in the comments section below. And if you are of the opinion that heroes, irrespective of their skin color, are deserving of justice, please subscribe as we continue to expose further narratives where valor confronts inequity and where resistance sparks change that saves lives and permanently alters fractured systems.